Okay, I'm delighted to be joined today by Adriana Timco, who is a producer for Dare Pictures. We're going to be talking a little bit today about Adriana's current role and a little bit about how she got here. We're going to talk a little bit about development production, which is an area that is often misunderstood. Adriana studied English literature at Cambridge and has spent quite a few years now building your profile in the film and television industry. So welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, hi, I'm Adriana. You are right, I am at the minute at a company called Dare Pictures. It's a fairly new company. It was set up 3 years ago by a lovely smart man called Darren Lawford. And he also went to Cambridge University, actually, which I later found out. It's this year it has won Emerging Indie of the Year, even though Darren has decades of experience in TV. So do I, and other people in the company. I was connected to Dare and Darren by Sky Documentaries before Christmas because they were looking to find development producers to, in a way, help develop a slate specifically for Sky at Dare to, in a way, it's a scheme for newer emerging companies. TV has a lot of larger organizations that, in a way, have always taken a bigger slice of the pie. And it's nice that broadcasters want to encourage newer talent and more diverse voices, and to give them an opportunity, to also pitch ideas, especially in the premium documentary space, which can be quite exclusive. So I've been working at Dare for a few months now, and it's really lovely. It's very different to all the other companies I've been at because, and can speak about it a bit later. I grew up at the BBC. After growing up at Cambridge, I grew up at the BBC, spent lots of years there, and then at other independent production companies, but they were quite big in a way, and then they were quite established. So working at a very small company that operates more like a startup is different, but it's actually it's good. It's keeping me on my toes. We are operating in more innovative ways. So when you're at a small company at a time in TV that is a bit difficult for various reasons, you have to be a hustler. So you have to find different means of financing your productions and trying to get investment from different pots of money, and speaking to investors, as well as obviously different channels and streamers. And so it's fast paced, but quite fun. And when you're small, you have a lot of hunger.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. So if anybody was to look at your LinkedIn profile, they would see that in 2023, when you went to Expectation Entertainment, you lost the prefix development and you became a producer. So I'm really interested to know a little bit more about the difference between those two roles, with and without the prefix. And kind of where that fits, I guess, in terms of your own kind of career trajectory.
Well, I'll start by saying that I accidentally ended up in development. That I started at the BBC as a production assistant, and that happened to be in science development, and that wasn't my first role. But eventually, I became a production assistant in science development. I had no idea what development meant, and then I soon realized that it's actually it's really interesting and it's really journalistic, and I could use my writing skills. And obviously I did English literature because I loved to read and write, and all of a sudden there was this opportunity to write proposals, to develop ideas, to, development pretty much means the origin of the idea that will end up on TV later on. So you usually work on so many things. It's never one thing at a time. You have to stay ahead of the news, trends, see what people are talking about. So it does feel very journalistic. You're constantly looking for access, access to people, to institutions. You are I think that's the best part of development, because your brain becomes really open to the world and open to what people are saying, and this whole spectrum of opinions. And you are at that time at the BBC, we were just pitching to BBC, and then that changed. But so now you can work with all sorts of channels and streamers from across the world, and they're all looking for their own tone, for their own ideas. So development pretty much means developing ideas from a seed to a commission, when the broadcaster basically gives you money to make that thing, and then it goes to a separate team, and they start filming, they start actually going on location and making the seed that you were, they're growing the tree. And yeah, so for 10 years, I think, if not more, I ended up working in development, kind of, from researcher to senior researcher, assistant producer, then producer, where I was in charge of my own ideas. You go through from that seed to various stages, because now broadcasters don't commission as easily. You have to really have like a proof of concept that this idea is going to work. Even when I started, sometimes commissions came so quickly. We'd be like, what about this? And you'd write 4 or 5 pages, and in a few weeks it's like, done, great, commissioned. That doesn't happen anymore at all. Ideas can get stuck in a way in development for half a year, but it's never languishing. You're always doing something. You're finding contributors and who will want to be in the series. So you're doing pretty much a lot of the prep work that would have been done in production earlier. So you are writing the episode script beat by beat. You're doing the director's vision, because you're working with a director often. You're doing taster tapes, sizzle tapes, and that can take a while. And especially when it comes to streamers like Netflix, they do want a very detailed deck. Everyone's in a way become more risk averse. So and a lot of people beforehand used to say, oh, I definitely have access to this institution, this person. And then it gets into production and none of the work has been done. So now they really want you to have people signed up, institutions signed up, and to really know what you're going to make. So it's fast paced, it's interesting. You get attached to ideas, which is hard because only a very small percentage of the ideas gets commissioned. So, I mean, it's really easy for me to say, have a thick skin, because that's what I've been told. But it's so difficult when you've invested a lot of time and energy. And it's usually because, you tell these people who then want to tell their stories, or you persuade them to tell their stories. And after half a year, you say, I'm really sorry, but actually, this is not going to happen. So you feel really invested for them. And that's the hardest bit. But I always say that, if it didn't happen at that time, keep your relationships nice and warm, and it could happen at a later stage. It doesn't mean that idea that's it. Nobody wants to make it. And it's good to kind of tell people that it's a lot of the time it's luck, it's time, it's money, and everyone's commissioning fewer and fewer things. And yeah, but I spent a long time in development, 10 years, but I really wanted to make my own thing and actually see an idea from the beginning till the end. I mean, for many reasons, but also because I could never explain to my parents what I actually did for a living. They were like, you develop ideas? Okay, when am I going to see this? Well, when are you doing it? They're like, well, I've passed it on to someone else and they're taking all the credit. So, and I've always wanted to direct as well. So, but once you're in a way good at development, and there are not that many people specializing in development. Now there are more, but at that time, companies do want to keep you because you are across so many things that it's kind of hard to take you out, because it's all about human relationships and things that you've been working on for years. But this opportunity, it was, in a way, it's a bittersweet story for me because it all started with the war in Ukraine. I was born in Moldova, but I have Ukrainian roots on my dad's side, including my surname is Ukrainian. And my dad grew up on the border. And it really hit me hard. It hit my family hard. I have lots of friends with family in Ukraine. So at that time, I couldn't concentrate on any of the things I was working on. And I was working at a different company then, and to my boss's credit, he saw that I was really upset and said, "Okay, let's develop something. You know, it might help you." At that time, that the initial project that I was working on, it didn't happen for so many reasons, and but in a way, alongside it, I had spotted a different germ of an idea. I had been looking at people who were evacuating vulnerable people from the front line, people who didn't have the chance to leave places that were surrounded. They didn't have chance to live by themselves. And I had connected with a few individuals who had been doing that, including Americans and British, who had gone to Ukraine at the start of the war, and just to help out. And then coincidentally, they ended up being evacuators, and that became a role. And then in the autumn of 2022, in the first year of war, I connected with a few people, including a Cornish lad called Chris Parry, really lovely, really energetic. And he was filming his missions on GoPro and his colleagues as well. So he started sharing a few things with me, and he said, you know, he really would love to kind of tell the world what's really going on there, and how these cities were completely razed to the ground, but there were still people living in all these bunkers, and they were trying to, in basements, not even bunkers, and they were trying to get them out. And often you didn't really know where they were because Google Maps doesn't work, and they were running around under missiles. Really dangerous work. But there was nothing in a way to kind of keep him away from it, because he said, you know, I need to do this. There's something that's calling me. I just found my purpose. I need to help these people. And unfortunately, he had been there for a year, rescued more than 400 people. And then in January 2023, he was caught by the Wagner Group and executed alongside his colleague as well. And then I knew then that I had to, I don't know, I first of all, I had made him a promise that if anything were to happen, I'd do this for his family. And so I basically took that to the BBC, into a different company. I told them about Chris and his colleagues, his friends. His family really wanted to do something with his footage as well. So that then allowed me as well the possibility to work on the film, because I felt really responsible for his story, and I really wanted to see it until the end. It was just, yeah, it was so personal on so many levels. And so in a way, I was working on that project for 2 years and a half, if you were to count the original germ of an idea. And we finished it last summer. It's called Help Jumper. It's on the BBC. Please do watch it for his sake and the people of Ukraine. And it's worth saying that it's also, I know that it's really hard to watch war films. I mean, I postponed watching All Quiet on the Western Front until last weekend. Because I'm not, I constantly am doom scrolling, following so many wars in so many countries, especially. It's so hard to keep up. And you want to just look at cats and puppies, but we do have cats and puppies in the documentary because it's very youthful, and this is what we really wanted to portray. The better side of humanity and the light when it in hard and dark times. Because Chris and his friends and his family really kind of incorporated that light. He made friends, he fell in love, and so it's not just harrowing, despite what happened. He he touched a lot of lives and he saved a lot of lives. So I feel very privileged to have worked on that, and yes. And after that, I needed a holiday, so I went traveling around Europe. So my friends went back to Moldova, reconnected with my roots. And then I came back, and then Sky Documentaries asked me how would I feel if I met with Darren, and I came in at there and developed some new ideas. So that is so now I'm back in development, but I do not want to get stuck for 10 years again. So I'm happy to do development for a while and see if there's a project there that could again take from idea to completion.
Right the way through, yes. So basically what you've done in this amazing project is earned your stripes as a producer. You've taken that project right the way through. It sounds like an amazing piece of film, so we all need to go and watch it, and I will put the link to it at the bottom of the YouTube. When people are watching it, it's down there. Have a look. It must be incredibly exciting but draining and emotional working on, something so important to you. I'm wondering, thinking back in your kind of earlier career in development, it can't all have been that roller coaster of emotional investment. What are sort of some of the ups and downs of working in normal development? And yes, have a sip. Sorry.
It's my love sip. Yeah, it's definitely, most people who work in TV and work in development don't actually end up in current affairs or war films, or so there's such a variety. There's a whole spectrum of ideas that you can develop. But I ended up specializing in premium documentaries, as they call it, high-end documentaries, because there were the types of things that I would watch as well. At the same time, when me and my family, we came to Britain, what myself and my mom watched all the time. Maybe, well, we enjoyed it, but also to understand British culture, we watched, Come Dine With Me, Four in a Bed, 10 years younger. We watched like every single format that was possible. And my mom still does, she's actually, all the British drama series and the different daytime TV series. and Big Brother and Strictly Come Dancing. So I was actually very familiar with mainstream formats. So I developed a few myself, but I think because I've always been more journalistic, then I ended up always being attracted to political stories, and or I also love natural history. So if anybody, when I was little, it's always watching Animal Planet and Discovery and David Attenborough. So in a way, that's always been my dream, to one day develop something with animals. So that there's so many things that you can do, and I think now, departments used to be more prescriptive. So when I was at BBC, there was like science and arts and docs and history, and everyone had their slate. And I think now it's, especially if you're at an independent company, you can develop a whole range of things, because you are pitching to so many channels and to so many commissioners. So as long as the story is interesting and compelling, because that's what people really care about. And there are always a few buzzwords. There are things that are cyclical. True crime is always popular, but at the same time, I think there will come a time, and maybe it's already coming, that true crime will be slightly less, gory and controversial, and it'll be more about the victims, and perhaps we'll have something bigger and deeper to say. And we're seeing a new trend where it's more like true history, which is very interesting, where you're looking at contemporary history ideas, and you are seeing them through a different lens, or you are adding a journalistic layer. And the Sky is actually quite good at that, and that's what they want to develop a bit more. What do you have to say about the world? And what's quite nice is that a lot of channels, they do think about purpose, and they do think about, how in such a divided world, how do we bring people together, and how do we include a wider variety of opinions, so we can hear each other rather than yell at each other or just say 3 words. How do we include more nuances? So development can be really interesting, and there's also music documentary. So at Dare, because Darren has a great background in music as well, and he has all these connections in the music industry. So music is what I have in my ears from morning till evening, with a few podcasts in between. So it's actually really great to think about artists and musicians that have changed the world, but they also had complex personalities, and can we look at them through a contemporary lens, and can we can we see them with new modern eyes? So we also introduced them to a generation of young people that perhaps hasn't heard of them as much. And then and then on the flip side, how do we introduce young singers and musicians to an older generation that might think, pop music, it's all gone to the dogs. So it's you're always thinking, and you're always thinking about what can make a story last 3 episodes or 3 acts if it's a 90-minute. Because often, there's so many interesting articles, and so there's so many interesting subjects, but if you're not thinking of them in terms of documentary, and what are you going to see? Is it archive, interviews? What are you filming? If it's a past tense story, what can you show? If it's present tense, what can you follow? Yes. So, and how many everyone always says this. How many twists and turns to the story are you going to have? How can you keep the viewer engaged for 3 episodes or 90 minutes? So it doesn't feel like, you following kind of the same beat, or you're guessing ahead, and you kind of know already. So that's what actually happens often with true crime stories. They all end up feeling and looking the same. So how do you constantly reimagine the genre and blend things? And everyone's always looking for novelty, and audiences, they are clever, and then we all get bored about if we see the same thing over and over again. So, but the one thing I will say is that story is the most important thing.
And the way you're talking about it, given that when we kind of introduced this conversation, that development is something that tends to be more overlooked. If you speak to many students and kind of graduates entering the industry, they're saying, I want to be in production, and that's partly perhaps not understanding kind of the full process and the different stages, and therefore the different roles within that process. But the way you're talking about development, it sounds more interesting than many aspects of production. There's so much more scope in terms of the skills that you're bringing to bear, actually, that links so well, as you say, to, for example, a degree in English literature.
Yeah, that is so true. And actually, you'll hear a lot of people in production complaining about being in production and then wanting to be in development, but because they haven't done development, they will find it hard. But development people actually can make the jump to production far easier, because we're always thinking about how the film will look anyway. So not to say, oh no, our development people we could do everything, but in a way you are taught, you are molded to think about the film and how it looks, how it's gonna, who are you gonna interview. You're already speaking to the contributors. You are forming those really close relationships, and which is why often development people will go and actually make a film, because you have those relationships with the people that will make your film, that will be the essence of your film. So, but with production, and you can, there'll be a lot of difficult days, waking up in the morning, long days, all over the world and Britain, and that can be really exciting. But if you're just doing production and it's one thing after another, it can get quite exhausting, and you're moving on very quickly. You're working with a team. You're working with them for a year, I think, or maybe less, and then you just have to move on. But with development, we often, often do stay for 3 years, 4 years, and you develop closer bonds, and you meet the really important people in the industry, because you get to talk to commissioners, and it can get quite political, and so you kind of see how the industry works, and you have a better understanding of who's in charge, who's in power, what's changing. So it can be a bit House of Cards.
It's a fantastic way of describing it. So basically, let's kind of sum up at this point. You need to have that sort of love of ideas. You need to be, particularly if you're in the kind of the non-scripted or documentary, that interest in journalism and political affairs or environment or whatever. By the sounds of it, watching lots of telly when you're younger is really, really good, and knowing what's happening, kind of keeping one finger on the pulse of, as you say, where particular genres of TV are going, and that attempt to stay one step ahead. I wanted to go back to the beginning and thinking about, you know, current students or recent graduates who are trying to make their way in this pretty complicated industry. So you started kind of with the researcher role.
Well, I actually started as a production management assistant.
Sorry, that's right, you did.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that, you know, it's hard to start as a researcher, but if you start as an assistant or as a PA or as a production assistant, you can make that jump into editorial, as we call it, into the more, because TV is in a way also split into production management and then editorial side. And I started as a production management assistant and a PA, and that's because, to rewind, but I don't think I'm not sure if that opportunity is still available. But I do encourage people to look at schemes and mentoring programs. When I was 16 and doing my A-levels, I did do a BBC mentoring program, and that was every Friday, and you get introduced to different departments, but not that it made it like super easy to find a job after I graduated, because it's still, you know, the sad thing about the industry is that things are not really advertised, and if you don't know people, it's hard. So I constantly applied to different schemes and pools, like production management assistant pool, and you also try and meet as many people as you can, and ask them, you know, just ask them for contact details to other people, so that you kind of build your own little list and your own network. And, you know, not everybody will want to meet you or give you advice, but one person from 10 might, and they might then introduce you to someone else. And there are, I think, you know, at that time, I was also trying to get into film, and I did so much unpaid work experience, and I think thankfully now unpaid work experience doesn't exist, and internships are actually paid. But I would advise people to basically just hustle, I mean, you know, hustle, not hassle. Also be polite and kind, because people in TV can get a bit ADHD and not really like follow up on emails. So you have to, in a way, you have to be your own advocate and be polite and kind, but also just ask, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You can just ask for people's advice and time, 5 minutes, buy them a coffee, you know. And there are so many different ways to get into TV. You know, I know people who went into producing and directing far faster than me because they went to the National Film and TV School. But at the same time, not many people can afford those fees. So, I mean, I think they have some scholarships. But then there are, you know, there are other schemes. There's the Grayson scheme, I think, and Netflix and Sky, I think they also encourage young filmmakers to send ideas, and so they can produce their own thing. So there are various kind of ways in. The Edinburgh TV Festival, I think, also has they have a few programs for recent graduates. But other than that, you know, watch a lot of TV, as you said, look at the production companies at the end, and then contact those production companies and say, you know, I really loved your series on blah blah, or your film. You know, could I take somebody out for coffee? Can I ask for advice? This is my CV. Or even if you ask advice on your CV, or even if you say, you know, do you have any work experience placements, or hopefully they are paid. I think they do pay everyone now. So you just have to just get out there and ask, and do not give up, because it's not going to be, the thing is, it's not going to be easy. But if you really want it, you know, you can make it happen.
And if it's
Yeah.
one thing that I was told years ago, actually, was about the right job title to target. So if it's, I'm trying to remember it now, if it's documentary and similar, then the AP is a good person to actually seek out. And I can't remember who it is when you're looking at drama production. There can be a slightly different sort of hierarchy, but as you say, you know, you can look those companies up on the programs themselves. You can look them up on the knowledge directory. How do you decide who you pitch your ask to in the hierarchy?
Okay. Yeah, exec producers are not very likely to email you back or
No.
reply back because they are busy and yeah, they have other meetings in a diary. So yes, APs, that is a good role to. Usually, what's interesting is that I'm trying to think, aren't there many? There used to be many APs in development, and now for some reason there's like there are researchers and then producers, and I haven't. That's probably because of the companies I've been in. But if you don't find an AP when it comes to development, go for the researcher because they're probably doing an AP role, or go for the producer.
Okay.
Because development producers, you know, people would, if they would contact me, I try to reply. I do get many LinkedIn messages and I try to keep up with them. I'm sorry if I haven't replied to everybody. um, but yeah, so at least somebody will. And if people don't reply, don't take it personally. It's probably because either they've got something going on and they don't have the time, or it's just a numbers game. Somebody will, and somebody will give you advice and will look at your CV or will tell you. But also, forgot to say, production managers, even though you don't want a job in production management, managers are really good at knowing what productions are starting, what roles they're looking for, and they can kind of keep your CV on file. And a lot of companies also have talent managers. So I think once you're in TV, fortunately, talent managers then approach you, so you don't have to like put yourself out there anymore. But they can also, they're really good at knowing like what's happening across the whole industry. So BBC, for example, has a lot of talent managers, and I think they often will get CVs from entry-level positions as well. Other independent production companies will kind of share talent managers because they'll have their own company and they will act as consultants. Yeah, so there are various people that you can approach. LinkedIn, for some reason now, LinkedIn's having some renaissance, but everyone's on LinkedIn now. Everyone
It's
is on
amazing,
LinkedIn.
isn't it? Yes, because I remember sort of 15 years ago, you couldn't find anybody working in actually in the creative space outside of, you know, graphics and marketing and advertising. But it's a very rich space now. I wonder whether that's simply because a generation of students were using it and they've carried it forward into their professional lives. Thinking about skills, so you're making approaches, you've done a bit of thinking about whether it is development or whether you want to go into production, or maybe you're interested in post-production, maybe you're interested in very technical areas, but either way, you've got a sense of where you'd like to be, and the skills are going to be slightly different depending on where you're headed. What are still the fundamental skills? What are the things that are going to you're going to need to ensure that, you know, maybe a month-long contract working on a production as a runner is not going to be your last, that you're going to build your network and be asked back to do something else?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to entry-level positions, it's worth saying that nobody likes making tea or coffee or dragging kit around. Nobody does. I've been there, many times. But you kind of have to swallow a bit of your pride when it comes to some things. That doesn't mean taking disrespect or being harassed or feeling small. So those are complete different things. But making yourself invaluable and talking to people, being friendly counts for a lot. Everyone's often really stressed. So if you can get them a cup of tea without them asking, but without being a brown noser, as they say. But being caring and showing an interest in the series, in the film, and being kind of warm and nice, friendly to be around, and kind of not anticipating what people might, because I feel really uncomfortable to ask runners sometimes for like help, but if you can ask, can I help you with something? You can, as a runner, you can do some research yourself. It's and you would help a producer out as well, because sometimes I don't have time to do my own research, but if somebody offers to help me look into a subject or find me a contributor, I really appreciate it. And then I won't take credit for it. I'll be like, oh, so and so help me with this. What do you think? And I'll tell the exec producer and I'll copy in the runner. So then and that's how it starts. You're just building a reputation for being hardworking, for having good ideas. Try and think of ideas and pitch ideas and yeah, I mean, still be respectful of people's time, and yeah, and don't hassle too much, but find some common ground, nice balance.
Find that balance, absolutely. Yeah. And thinking about being respectful of people's time, I think we probably need to wrap up, because we've been talking for, I think, about 45 minutes, something like that. It's flown by. So you've got some great advice there for people. What would you like them to kind of leave this recording with? What's the kind of the one nugget that, looking back through your career, I guess has made the difference?
I think persistence, be a bit like Rockie, you'll take a few blows, you'll fall to the ground, but that's not the end of the world. You will get back up. Find allies, find friends, surround yourself with people you can trust. It's, I have to be honest to say that it's not like the easiest industry, but probably a lot of industries are not that easy, because it involves different people with strong personalities, and a lot of us are attracted to this world because we have something to say, and all of a sudden you have a lot of people in the room with something to say. And you'll end up with like lots of chefs. But it's, don't be arrogant about your opinion, but also think that your opinion has something of value. And have a dream, and if you feel passionate about something, pursue it, and find the people who will help you to make it happen.
That's fantastic. Adriana, thank you so much. It's been delightful talking to you. And good luck with the next project, as I'm sure you are working on something at the moment, and I hope that it all goes really smoothly for you. Thanks again for your time.
I hope so too. Thank you very much, and good luck, everyone.